Ever feel like you're just spinning your wheels? You're putting in all this work, but you're just not getting anywhere? Well, today we're going to jump into this really fascinating ancient debate where the Buddha himself puts that exact question on trial. Is all your effort actually worth it?
Okay, so the story starts with this group of philosophers, right? They're called the Niganthas. And they had this, well, honestly, kind of bleak idea. They believe that everything happening to you right now is basically just an echo of what you've done before. It's like you're stuck living out a script that's already been written, just paying off these old karmic debts.
So if that's the case, if your life is just this predetermined thing, how do you ever get free? Well, their answer was pretty straightforward. You just got to burn it off. And they meant that literally. Through some really extreme self-denial, enduring a whole lot of pain, they thought you could just, exhaust all that bad karma and stop making a new mess. It's a pretty brutal, head-on way of looking at things.
But then the Buddha shows up. And here's the cool part. He doesn't come in with some big new philosophy to replace theirs. No, he comes armed with something way more powerful: questions. He just starts asking questions that are designed to poke holes in the very foundation of what they believe.
And he starts right at the beginning, at their most basic assumption. He's like, okay, so your entire theory is built on this idea of past lives. But can you actually prove it? Can you tell me with 100% certainty that you even existed before this life?
And he doesn't stop there. He keeps pressing them. All right, let's just say you did exist. Do you know exactly what bad things you did? Can you point to the specific deeds you're now paying for? Or is this whole thing just a big assumption?
And then comes the real kicker, the knockout punch. He asks, look, if you're trying to pay off a debt, don't you need to know how much you owe? Do you know if you have just one more hour of the suffering to go, or 1,000,000 more lifetimes? How can you possibly know if your solution is working if you don't even know the size of the problem? And the answer to every single one of those questions was a simple no. The Niganthas had to admit it. They didn't know. Their whole system, all that painful, grinding effort, it wasn't built on knowledge. It was built on faith. Faith in something they couldn't prove. Their effort was completely blind.
So this is where it gets really interesting. To understand the alternative path the Buddha offers, we have to zoom in a little bit. The whole debate, it turns out, pivots on the meaning of one single, super important word in the original Pali.
And that word is apakamo. You see this word pop up again and again in this discussion, and getting what it really means is the key to unlocking the Buddhist entire way of thinking about what makes our actions, our efforts, worthwhile. Okay, so if you look at a standard translation, you'll probably see upakama translated as just effort. And you can see how that fits perfectly with what the Niganthas were saying, right? Just push harder, endure more pain, grind it out. It's all about brute force.
But what if we dig a little deeper into the language? There's this ancient way of analyzing words called niruti, and when you use it to look at the roots of upakamo, well, you find something else. It doesn't just mean brute force effort. It points to something more like a strategic initiative, a plan, an intelligent, skillful way to begin something.
And not one little shift in translation, it changes everything. We're talking about the difference between mindless, brute force striving and mindful, intelligent action. Between just painfully enduring something and skillfully applying yourself. One is basically a dead end. The other? Well, that's the start of a path that actually leads somewhere.
So when we understand upakamo as strategic initiative, we suddenly get what the Buddha's alternative is all about. See, he's not against effort, not at all. He's against wasted, fruitless effort. He's teaching the art of trying smarter, not just harder. Think about it. The Niganthas' whole plan was to fight suffering by, well, adding more suffering. The Buddha's path is the complete opposite. It's way more precise, almost like a surgeon. The idea is to find the actual cause of the suffering and then skillfully remove it. He gives this brilliant example. Imagine a man who's just desperately in love. If he sees the woman he loves with another guy, it causes him just immense pain, right? But now, imagine that same man works on himself. He works to let go of that intense attachment, that clinging desire. And then he sees her with someone else, and he feels nothing. The suffering wasn't caused by the event itself. It was caused by his attachment to the event. Here's another great image he uses, an expert arrow fletcher. They don't just grab a crooked piece of wood and try to force it straight. It would just snap in two. Instead, what do?
They gently heat it, apply just the right amount of pressure again and again until the arrow becomes perfectly straight and effective. That is the art of skillful action.
And we can actually break this down into a few steps. First, you got to recognize what's really going on. See the root of the problem, whether it's an attachment or just an unhelpful thought pattern. Second, you adjust. You figure out when to apply that strategic effort and, just as importantly, when to practice equanimity, when to just let it be. And finally, you refine. You keep up the practice only as long as you need to get the job done. No more, no less. Just like that arrow, Fletcher.
Okay, so what does any of this ancient stuff mean for you and me today? This isn't just some dusty, abstract debate. It's actually a super practical guide for how we can deal with our own challenges right now.
At the end of the day, the path of the Niganthas, all that brute force effort based on a guess, was a total dead end. It was just exhausting and didn't get them anywhere. But the Buddha's path, this path of strategic initiative, of smart, skillful action, that's an empowering way to begin, that actually bears fruit.
And so that leaves us with one last question to think about. When you look at your own life, your work, your relationships, even what goes on in your own mind, are you just supplying brute force? Are you just grinding it out? Or are you applying skill, wisdom, and strategy? Is your effort just effort, or is it artful?